Hello and welcome to Fermenting Opinions. I'm your host, David Biden.
I'm your co-host, James McVeigh.
And we are Fermenting Opinions, the podcast in search of a more palatable political ferment. Today is July 11th, 2018. This is Season 2, Episode 15. And here with us today, we have back on the show, Mariah Phillips. Mariah, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's good having you back. We had you on, I believe it was back in the fall.
It was right before Halloween, and I remember that because you had some Halloween decorations.
Does my house honestly look any different though?
Not too much, no. Actually.
But anyway, so you're running for U.S. Congress in Tennessee's 4th District.
Yes, sir.
Right, and we had you on last time. We talked a little bit about some of the issues and reasons why you're running and things like that. But we wanted to follow up with you and ask you, what have you been up to? How's the campaign been? Like, this was your first, running for office for anything, as far as I understand.
It is.
And I bet it's been, quite the journey. So maybe tell us a little bit about
Absolutely.
that.
Running for any elected office was not on my bucket list. I've always been fascinated by politics, as you guys have. I've had a chance to overhear your conversations and kind of follow Fermenting Opinions for over a year now. And I know that my family, we grew up watching politics like a lot of families watch sports. Mm-hmm. But running for Congress, again, not on my bucket list. I just, the political process is very slow. I'm somebody who likes to get things done and quickly and solve problems. And so this was not something that I ever planned to do, but it's been the most incredible experience of my life. I've met fantastic people, and I continue to know that every day when I wake up, the work is more important. So,
well, cool. That's it sounds like quite a journey for sure. Oh my God. Okay. Always at the beginning of these things, there's something I'm going to have to edit out. And this will be the one. I left the door open for your husband. Her husband's out canvassing right now.
That's right.
Just making maximum use of her time. And so the door is open. My dog, I think, sees a squirrel or something across the yard. And so for anyone watching this live, they're going to be entertained by that. And for everybody else, you're not going to see that because I'm going to edit this out. Anyway, so a lot's happened, right?
Yeah.
In the country, in the world. Since you first came on.
Absolutely.
I think one of the big ones was this was back in February, the school shooting in Florida.
Yes.
And the ensuing March for Our Lives that occurred after that. And my understanding, you got somewhat involved with that.
Well, absolutely. So I am a teacher, right? So the school shootings actually are something that we think about regularly. We have active shooting drills in the classroom. I actually remember last fall, I had a conversation. We decided it was a nice day. The sun was shining. We had an active shooter drill, and then immediately followed a fire drill because it was a good day for it. Mm-hmm. Well, I remember walking out with my students and the other teachers, and kind of whispered to the teacher next to me. I said, "This would be a great opportunity for somebody to perform an active shooting when pull a fire alarm and all of us calmly and casually walking in a line, mm-hmm. It would be easy to pick us off." And so when the school shooting happened in Parkland, Florida, I remembered saying that. I thought, oh my gosh, like that's exactly what happened. He pulled the fire alarm, everybody casually and calmly, went to their positions, and he was able to perform his attack. And it really hit me. As your teacher, well, yeah.
I'm an educator, yeah.
And, it really hit me, and I knew that I wanted to get involved. So with March for Our Lives, I immediately actually started kind of working with some of my organizations and said, we need to do something. Let's do something in Murfreesboro. Let's do something in Nashville. What can we do? And just as we were getting ready to plan something, the Women's March and the Power Together Tennessee posted that they were going to have an event. And so we jumped into that. And I was very fortunate that as a teacher, I was able to share my perspective about the power of student voice, about why it was important to listen to the young people, especially in times of tragedy like this, because young people really are the future. Young people are really the ones that are pushing forward. And we've continued to see in this situation with March for Our Lives, they have continued to stand up and fight against gun violence in schools. So I was proud to be able to present at the March for Our Lives in Nashville. We had a rally from Rutherford. We made signs. We had about 30 people that gathered together to make signs about protecting our students, and it was really powerful.
Wow. You look like you wanted to follow up on that.
No, I was just random thoughts on this, but
Gotcha.
just March for Our Lives and whatnot, and some of the more vocal people.
Sure.
David Hogg stands out very clearly as somebody who's memed often by the right for all kinds of reasons.
Sure.
He is extremely vocal there. Do you think, because I don't want to discount the voice of students, but
Right.
do you think there is a level where it's just too much? He gets a lot of negative criticism.
So as a libertarian, I'm surprised that you would ever
I
say that it's too much
I don't want to
control over
I don't want to
his First Amendment
curtail. I
freedom.
was going to say I don't want to curtail his rights. I
right.
just meant like, do you start doing more harm than good?
I understand what you're saying. I think that the power of their message is important. I think that there are always going to be people who are going to have a louder voice.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, in the political climate that we're in right now, the people with the loudest voice often are the ones who get attacked the most. And so I think that I think he's 19 years old now, 18 or 19 years old. The way that he's been able to present himself has been incredible, and I continue to encourage him. But I think where we need to go with this is, I'm running for Congress. What are the policies, right, that need to come out of the March for Our Lives?
Yes.
So we can talk about David Hogg and the memes, but really what we need to talk about is what kind of policy can move us forward. And because of my involvement with March for Our Lives, I often get a question about like the Second Amendment and, do I support, gun control, or am I going to take everybody's guns?
I can absolutely promise you that was coming.
And the reality is, no, I don't want to take people's guns away or anything like that. When we're looking at gun ownership and our rights as gun owners, is responsible gun owners want their neighbors to be responsible gun owners.
Well, this is very true, definitely.
Right? So there are things that we can do that can help us ensure that we're going to be more responsible. And I think that's where we really can have the conversation. So a couple of examples that I would say, we need to make sure that we have background checks. We need to have better education before people purchase. And I'll give you the example, when I got my concealed carry permit, I had to have a background check.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I had to take a class where I learned how to discharge, I learned safety, I learned storage, proper storage, all of the ways to be a responsible gun owner.
You were tested and graded on this.
Absolutely.
And then same thing with proficiency.
Absolutely. And it wasn't until I could pass those safety measures and really accountability measures that I was able to get my handgun carry permit. So I think that when looking at that, I think that is responsible. Right?
Okay.
And I think that we can, I don't think it would be difficult for us to have that conversation. How can we implement that for other types of guns, right? I don't think it's necessarily more guns or less guns. It's responsible gun ownership.
Okay. If you don't mind exploring that for a moment, you're going to see a lot of pushback on the idea of licensure to exercise a fundamental right. Mm-hmm. Pretty much at this point, SCOTUS is on our side saying that it is a fundamental right to own firearms.
Yes.
Now, whether you can carry them or do anything else with them is entirely in question. I mean, Scalia wrote, I believe, both Heller and McDonald, that are two gun controlling cases, one for states' rights, one federally.
Sure.
And in both of those, he contemplated an assault weapons ban and said that's constitutional. If you wanted to ban assault weapons, you can. Public safety obviously is a competing right and factor that goes against the Second Amendment right. But licensure is going to be something that comes up and that people are going to push back on, saying, why do I have to have some kind of licensing simply to exercise a fundamental right? Do I have to have a free speech card that says I can only speak at certain times or in certain ways?
Right.
Voting is a great example of this too. Do I have to pass a literacy test to vote? must I be in a certain class to vote?
Yeah.
You know, what if
and that's actually, I mean, that's a great conversation, right? I mean, those are the kinds of conversations that we actually need to have. And that's what's not happening right now. And the current political climate is not going to allow us to have those conversations. Right.
I completely agree with
so,
you.
We actually did an episode maybe a couple months ago about Second Amendment absolutism, and that's exactly what you're referring to, is that people just screaming shall not be infringed.
Yeah.
And we can't have the conversation because we can't get them to stop.
But we need
even though it's legally garbage.
You know, exactly.
Yes.
And I'm happy to have the conversation, and you're going to find me being the guy who's screaming shall not be infringed, pretty much. You know, but I'll do it much more rationally. You know, I've reasoned my way through this, but I mean, that's still going to be my position.
But when we look at
I'm not comfortable with licensing.
The history of, I think part of the reason why we can't have the conversation anymore is because of the influencers that are not necessarily the people, the citizens, but the people that are kind of getting these ideas in our head, right?
Selling the narrative.
Selling the narrative. That's exactly right. And it takes us from being able to have that conversation. And I think a good, you look at like kind of the history of the NRA. The NRA used to be a gun safety, organization.
I also used to be a member of the NRA.
But their purpose, seems to have shifted less from that motive of gun safety to more of a lobbyist organization.
I was going to say sales, but
I mean, both arguments can be made. I would agree with you there. There are plenty of great gun safety organizations that are pro Second Amendment and lobby for your Second Amendment rights that don't do so in the scare tactics crazy way that the NRA does.
Right.
And I would recommend joining several of them instead of the NRA.
Well, yeah, but I think that but this is the conversation that something like March for Our Lives, we wouldn't have been having this conversation because we would have gone back to thoughts and prayers. Right? Thoughts and prayers are important. I'm a Christian, I'm a person of faith, so thoughts and prayers are important. But if we don't change the environment that allows for school shootings, mass shootings to happen, and we never have that conversation, we're never going to do anything more than just thoughts and prayers. And so I think we do need to continue the conversation and figure out where we need to go.
I would completely agree with you.
So to segue from there to, like you said, you're an educator. We've been talking about school shootings. To bring this back to that, do you have any thoughts or any proposals about not just talking about regulations, licensure, responsible gun ownership, but security, essentially, from that point of view, because there's always going to be someone who gets a gun who's not supposed to have one, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, always.
And isn't that what 9 times out of 10 that's who these shooters are? That they're people who should never have had them in the first place, and they go and they take them and they commit these.
But I'll go. What's the qualifier? They should never have had them in the first place. A lot of times, the school shootings, in particular, are people who they're young people who got them from their parents,
or the parents legally owned them, but the children should have never had access.
Should never have had access.
I mean,
responsible gun owners want their neighbors to be responsible gun owners. I do not. I'll say I do not believe in arming teachers. That's a common conversation that comes up here. As a teacher myself, I teach in the high school, and if the purpose of arming teachers is that you can have your weapon at the ready.
They become the first responder.
Right. And I'm a first responder myself, for first aid. But if I was also, packing heat, right? I work with high school students. I work with 18-year-olds that are 2 feet taller than me.
This is a common concern that I bring up too, is that what happens when the frail little old lady who's got the 45 on her hip gets the crap beat out of her by,
and are you going to tell
or she's scared by the big kid.
There's
often the big person of color kind of thing. There's that aspect of it too. I mean,
sometimes fear causes us to do things,
Well, that's why we have justified homicide as a reasonable subjective standard of fear. But
but they're still dead. And
exactly. And why I guess chum the waters.
Right. And so I don't believe in arming teachers. I think there are too many unintended consequences. Some of the other proposals that I've heard were eliminating the number of doors, access doors to a school. Did you hear that one? Yeah, that was something that
I think that's something that's been pursued though, because I used to coach mock trial for Spring Hill.
I was in mock trial in high school.
I was too.
Wow.
I loved it, and I was asked to do it back. I was asked to do it.
I was a witness. You were probably a lawyer.
I was indeed. But I was asked to do it as a coach after I became an attorney here,
Sure.
and I volunteered with them, and I was shocked at how difficult it was to get into the school. Because I mean, when I was in high school, I would just walk in whatever door I wanted to. Now there's like one entrance. It's bulletproof. There's like a bulletproof glass case.
Right.
There are metal detectors. You got to be like checked in. You wander to the office.
Right.
Everything's locked down. And I was just like, guys, what's going on here? I know I've been gone for like 10 years, but it's not been that bad, right?
Well, and the truth is, there are still plenty of exits and entrances around the school.
Well, the exits are
yeah, but people were talking about actually making less exits, because what happens is students will see somebody standing at the door, and what do you see when you sit?
Yeah, well,
yeah,
I mean,
right?
that's how we used to skip school all the time.
We can't reduce the number of doors, then it becomes a fire safety issue.
Yeah, I was going to say,
there's a
lot
lot
of the fire marshal.
Yeah,
sure.
there's a lot of issues. The schools in Rutherford County where I teach, they have SRO officers, school resource officers, and that is definitely a method to protect students. But I think it really does go back to making sure that people who shouldn't possess the weapon in the first place,
okay,
shouldn't have access.
And
right?
so on
Like
that end, we enter. Okay, yeah, I mean, obviously we don't want children to have access to firearms, whatever.
Right.
But
the case in Florida, the gentleman was...
He was 18. He was legally old enough to own it. Are we talking about increasing the age at which you can buy a firearm or own one? Or are we talking... And I ask this question because I love the mental health check idea and the background checks. That's awesome. But at the same time, at some point you start to infringe upon due process rights. Again, access to a fundamental right. How do you, one thing that was floated, I think, after Sandy Hook, I believe, was if you're on the no-fly list, the terrorist no-fly list, then you can't buy a firearm. Guess what? My last name put me on the terrorist no-fly list for a long time, and it was an arduous process to get off of that thing. It took several years.
Wow.
So that would restrict my...
You were put on a no-fly list?
I share 2 out of 3. I share 2 out of 3 names with the deadliest domestic terrorist in U.S. history. So yes, I was on a no-fly list because of that.
Oh wow!
I think also because of family ties to Ireland too. We're not that far removed from there, and I have some shadier.
I saw this story. I'm a great grandson of a terrorist.
So
there you go.
I'm sure that was part of it too, but it was a long appeals process. Be like, guys, this ain't me.
I don't know if I feel comfortable actually in the room with you guys here.
We're both on the no-fly list now.
Again, but that's my point.
I do not associate.
So you can't use something arbitrary like that, though. That's a terrible suggestion. You would need a quick remedy to that to stop somebody on that level.
And with mental health, it does get complicated because you get into all kinds of regulations, FERPA regulations, and things like that in terms of what qualifies as mental illness.
Well, exactly, and that's where I start to get concerned a little bit there too. I think it's a great idea. But at the same time, I don't want to place somebody with like general anxiety or ADHD or something like that on this list.
Which in today's society is about 75% of us.
Exactly. So what are we talking about with a mental illness? Because I know some people with generalized anxiety that should not own a firearm.
Right. Or drive a car.
Or any of those things. Yeah. I got one person in mind that's just... But anyway,
But I think it's important for us to have the conversation. And, right now we're in such an extremist kind of worldview where, it feels like you're either, all for it or all against it. And I think the middle ground is where the conversations lead us is to the middle ground and figuring out what's the right way forward. Right. Yes. That's how we solve problems.
Exactly. And it's important to have these discussions. And I completely agree with you. The political climate right now doesn't allow for that because everyone's just screaming, shot me, infringed on one side, and the other side is like, gun control, ban everything.
Right. But I think the thing is, though, that there is a middle here, right? And it gets ignored from all the punditry, and I think sort of what you're espousing is that, we can have the conversation. People don't have to lose their rights.
That's right.
And it's just, there are more voices like that than anyone really gets credit for.
I think so too. Yeah, we never really get traction. No one wants to listen to us.
We're not as exciting, or we don't sell as well on.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah, as David Hogg and Ted Nugent.
That's right.
Right. Because those are great.
Anyway, okay, so
March for Our Lives is one of the things that we did. Since I was last here, also we had the Mercosur Loves, which I was a part of that as well. In October of last year, we had the white supremacist organization that gathered at Charlottesville. The same groups were forming a rally in downtown Murfreesboro. In fact,
the ones that started in Shelbyville and thought they were going to pack their PB&Js and march up to Murfreesboro.
That's right. Yes. So it had originally started actually in Shelbyville, and then they were going to have a second rally in Murfreesboro. And so myself and several of the community organizers that I'm friends with, we started a conversation about how can we give them their First Amendment freedom to say what they want to say. They have a right to say what they want to say, but how can we stand in unity and say, here is where we stand. We stand together in love, we stand together in unity, and we stand against hate. And so Murfreesboro Loves decided, I know you had a talk on this as well.
Rebecca Bailey, she came on and talked about her experiences as just one of the counter protesters, and sort of the police presence and how everything was handled. It was really well done. But you actually got up and spoke.
No, I didn't. I was one of the organizers. Okay, there weren't actually speakers. It was we just basically had we had gathering spaces which were removed from the white supremacists themselves, but they were standing kind of away. But we were able to actually attract attention as they were coming into town. 2 different entrances, and they turned around and left. I think they only had about 7 or 8 people showed up.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, it was a massive failure. There were several thousand people in Murfreesboro.
Yes.
And they were ready for them.
Yeah, and I think that the Murfreesboro Police Department, Rutherford County Sheriff's Department, the businesses, the faith leaders. I mean, we spent a week preparing for this and really gearing up to. The police officers were working overnight, and so people organized meals for them. I mean, it was really a community effort. It was a beautiful event, and I was proud to be a part of that.
Yeah, it was definitely the right way to handle the situation because from what we've learned from from Charlottesville, we actually talked to a guy who was in Charlottesville. It was one of our early podcast episodes.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was right there when the car attack happened. He was like 10 feet away from it, and he caught it on video, like while he was, on Facebook Live.
Sure.
Yeah, he was right in the middle of it. But between that and just other things we've learned listening to other people who have gone through sort of experiences like this, there's a right and wrong way to handle these things. And going in and trying to fight the Nazis is what they want you to do.
That's right.
And so it was just handled brilliantly, and I'm glad you were part of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that definitely. We like you were saying, we talked to Miss Bailey about that, and that was very well done.
Yeah,
I think that's the best way to exercise your own First Amendment right to assemble and to free speech is to simply shout louder.
There you go.
But in those situations, yeah, exactly. It's essentially to be the bigger presence,
People don't know what we're talking about. Yeah. I guess somebody was playing La Bamba real loud. I think that was still in Shelbyville. And one of the white power dudes or whatever, like he just couldn't help himself and just started kind of bumping to it.
Yeah. In Murfreesboro, our louder shout was no hate, no fear. Everyone is welcome here. And it was powerful when you get thousands of people,
Definitely. No,
saying that positive message of, love. Murfreesboro loves. That's where it came from.
I liked it, and I was very happy with the outcome there.
Thank you.
Especially even in Shelbyville when they were doing their thing down there too. I thought it was very well handled. Everyone kind of handled it. I mean, obviously, this goes out to all of our first responders, everybody else with Tennessee law enforcement. I mean,
Yes.
this was very well handled
Yes.
on our end, and I was proud of our state in general, our constituents, our people. Like, we responded very well.
We
to
did,
this.
and it was definitely a community effort, statewide effort. I mean, a lot of people did all of the right things.
I think this is something I talked about with Miss Bailey as well. It's like I didn't go to this myself because I have a hard time not punching Nazis. I'm like, you can't really throw me in with these people because there's only so much racism and just hatred I'm going to listen to. Where I'm like, all right, somebody needs to hit that fool.
Well, then I'm glad you weren't there.
Exactly. So I know, but I'm an adult and I know better, so I don't go to these things. Like,
your boundaries.
Exactly. We can't do this. Like, some of us just don't belong with this kind of thing.
Right.
Because sooner or later, I want to throw a brick at somebody.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of you guys for not doing that.
Thank you.
It takes a lot of self-control that mine has to involve in staying at home.
I understand. Well, you did the right thing. Definitely did the right thing. Kind of on that vein, another thing that I had the opportunity to be involved in was in the battle for better immigration policy. We had the family separation at the border, and of course there was a lot of there are a lot of mixed feelings on that, but I think overwhelmingly the way that I feel about family separation, I think that's a travesty. Our immigration system is broken.
It's very clear, yes.
And in 2013, the Senate actually had a bill on the floor that passed in the Senate to help solve some of these problems that we continue to deal with. There was they strengthened border security. The Senate bill was going to help solve the DACA situation, and it was also going to make our process for illegal immigration much more fluid. Right now, if you come in and want to come to this country legally, it takes at least 10 years.
Oh, I know.
And for some even longer. I just had a friend tell a story, somebody that he knows. I have a lot of friends in the immigrant community, and he said that there was a family that had been here for 22 years, and they got denied immigration and legal status.
Do you know where they were coming from?
I don't. I want to say Syria.
Okay, so it's a hot button area.
Yes. But they've been here for 22 years.
But there's extreme vetting and whatnot.
Yes,
I don't know what that means necessarily because that was never really defined for us.
That's right.
But I can understand why it would be longer for someone from Syria.
Oh yeah,
not that it should be, but I get
22 years is a really long time.
That is
a
very long time.
So I think that we do have a broken immigration system that needs to be addressed. I'm disappointed that when the bipartisan bill passed the Senate, the House wouldn't even allow it for a vote on the floor. They wouldn't even allow it up for discussion. And so, kind of going back to, if you want to change the way Washington works, you've got to change the kind of people you send there.
You've got to sway and you're in the right business. You've got to sway the House. The Senate is much more reasonable than the House. The House is a lot of loudmouths.
That's right. And so, so the fact that it could pass bipartisan bill and we wouldn't even allow it to go for a vote in the House kind of shows you how broken Congress is. And so, so now we continue to deal with the same immigration issues that, because we haven't done anything. We haven't been able to solve any of these problems. And so the family separation, the zero tolerance policy that was implemented in April, separating the families, that caused a huge outrage.
But, it caused the separation of families by design.
Yes. Yes.
That zero tolerance for but it is I think it was a class B misdemeanor. And this is, and just to lay this out for people, that is the same level of criminality as transporting a water chestnut plant across state lines without a permit.
It is.
I'm not kidding.
On a state level, that's reckless driving. Doing more than 15 miles an hour over the speed limit.
Right.
Or driving without a license, or driving on a suspended license. These are all very minor misdemeanors.
What C is about is minor.
C is speeding tickets, moving infraction.
Right.
Public intoxication. Something that, at worst, public intox is going to land you in a drunk tank
In
and you're
general,
going to be
for things
released.
like this, there's a level of discretion that's afforded to, say, an officer
for sure.
or what have you.
You know, A misdemeanors include, you know, simple possession of all kinds of drugs, and a lot of them will end with you being written a citation, like a speeding ticket that you have to show up to court for.
Yeah.
But instead, we're putting people in camps.
Right.
And we're separating children from
I was
families.
going to say, and even worse than that is we're separating children from families. And as a mother, I have 5 children, and 4 that I had. I have a foster son as well. But you know, as a mother, I couldn't imagine knowing that my child, you know, some of these children only months old. You know, most of them were 3 and 4 years old, but some of them are infants.
But how do you find an
at
infant
3
once
or,
they move
at
to another
3 or
state?
4 years old?
Right.
You know, to know that you don't know when you're going to see them again, you don't know who's going to be taking care of them, who's going to comfort them when they're crying at night. That's devastating. And on the other hand, as a teacher, the trauma that these children have experienced will stick with them. You know, adverse childhood experiences are known to stick with children,
Crystallizing events. Yeah.
well into adulthood.
So, I mean, keep in mind, your conservative backlash is going to say, then why the hell are you trying to come into this country if you already know this is waiting for you?
Well, and in this particular case, with the separation of families, a lot of the families didn't know that, like when they, you know, it takes months for, you know,
for them to find out their policy.
Yeah, and so I don't support
they weren't
illegal
checking Facebook while crossing the desert,
right.
you know, in perilous conditions. Okay, I get that.
But I do, you know, I do believe that. I mean, I don't support, you know, illegal immigration in terms of, you know, people should come here legally. That's, you know, it's our system. But I also,
we should make it less onerous.
Perhaps we should. I think there is a better way to have handled that particular situation, and that's the way that we've been handling it for decades. You know, the fact that we separated something like 3,000 children, and now we don't know how to put them back together. We don't know where the children are. We've deported
we don't know
parents.
if exactly stopped either, right? I mean,
No,
the EO came out. The EO is Orwellian, by the way. Like it's instead of saying, "Oh, we're not going to separate families. We're going to lock them all up together." That's what it was designed to do.
Yes.
You know,
which I say is still better than separation, but
still a brilliant move in my opinion.
I mean,
on the administration,
like an evil genius.
Yeah, exactly. Like I feel like instead of standing around and telling Batman your plan, you really just hoodwinked him. You know.
Right.
Anyway,
I'm not supporting this, but
okay.
I was going to say the libertarian here is going to tell you I'm actually pro-immigration. You know, like I really am not a big fan of arbitrary borders and this idea that we should just shut people out for whatever reason. I mean, no, let commerce flow. People come in and out.
I mean, we've got crops dying in the field. I mean, just from a pure economic.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that economically, cash is king, and I'm trying to make money. So could we not do this?
I mean, that's
right.
you're
really hurting.
You know the moral argument here, just in a pure mercenary interest in money and
no. I mean,
it's still bad.
On the moral argument, we could do a better job of turning people away at the border and denying them due process, and just kicking them the hell out and letting them have their children as they go. You know, I mean, if we want to be moral about it, but that's not the proper way either. Sorry, I'm not trying to be evil genius here. I'm just saying that, yeah, let them come into the country. Whatever. Let's make money.
Okay.
I think the liberals would like this. Don't you want our tax dollars?
I don't even know where to go with that.
Yeah, I know, right? It's all about the call. I feel like we just had a conversation with a certain friend of ours. There's just
like
the conversation to a halt. Yeah, there really is. So, family separate. What would you propose if you could wave a magic wand in this thing, or what you would do? Say we're getting ahead of ourselves in Washington. What would you do to remedy this?
Well, I do think that we need to address. Well, you're talking about specifically family separation or immigration overall.
Let's talk about family separation.
Yeah.
So what's happened as a result of the EO, like present day right now?
I mean, honestly, I do believe that keeping the families together, even if they are being, you know, incarcerated together, is definitely a lesser evil. With the families that are separated now, we do need to focus on reuniting those families, and there has to be a way to do that.
I think we're not doing so very efficiently from what I read, but I do believe there are federal court orders forcing this, and people are in overtime trying to make it happen. As far as my understanding is, at least the headlines I'm reading is that are that they're forcing this issue. Like, they're trying to reunite families as quickly as possible, but they're realizing they can't find files.
Yes.
They don't know where children are. They've been moved to different states. One I read this morning was about a 31-year-old man, who'd be my age, who had like his 5-year-old son or something, and they took his kid from the border to New York. And no one can find his child, and no one can find his file. So he's been released and allowed to stay in the country for the due process situation, and all he cares about is finding his son.
Absolutely.
He was like, I have no idea where my son is. Can you guys find my son?
Yeah, there was a story this morning about a woman who was relocated to Tennessee awaiting her child, but she doesn't know where her children are. But, I mean, this is a problem.
Hugely.
I mean, if I could wave a magic wand, I'd, of course, put them all together. But I mean, we have to be more intentional whenever we make decisions like this. And I think that part of the problem, why this happened is that right now, we're making decisions that for very short-term gains that have very long-term consequences. And so we do need to pull back and have some oversight in some of these decisions that are being made. And that, that's something that needs to happen. We need to rein in some of the controls here, and remember that there are checks and balances in this country, and that we need to enforce them.
Absolutely, yeah.
Completely agree.
Let's agree. I guess let's move on from here.
Okay.
So at this point, you are one of 3 contenders in a primary, which is it's a pretty rare thing around here, especially on the left side of the aisle.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
So in a way, it's good we get the constituents have choices.
The U.S. government teacher in me is like ecstatic that we have a contested primary.
The person who's running the campaign.
Yeah, but as a candidate, it's terrible.
Yeah.
But no, actually, I do. Having choices is always good. I mean, I think that's the democratic process allows us to do that, and so I think. From for the Democratic Party, we have choices in several different races, right? The gubernatorial race, Dean and Fitzhugh are both up there, and actually, my congressional seat is not the only one that's contested. There are contested seats across the state.
There are indeed.
And so there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm in Democratic politics, and I think that's a positive thing for our party, and I think it's a positive thing for us in the state to be able to have multiple voices sharing similar messages and sharing them loudly. So,
how contentious have you found this race to be? I mean, like, are there people encamped really hard? Obviously, when we had the 2016 election, the whole Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton thing pretty much cost Hillary Clinton the election. Right. If half of the people that were diehard Bernie kids, or Bernie bros, as we like to call them, if the Bernie bros had jumped on the Hillary train, possibly Hillary would be our president right now.
Right.
Do you see concern in your race or other races that involve this same idea of encampment, saying, no, I'm not going to vote, or I'm not going to be involved if so-and-so wins the nomination?
I don't see so much as people saying that they're not going to vote or they're not going to be involved. I think the enthusiasm for certain people will be less. And I think that that's true. I mean, if you are an ardent supporter of one particular candidate, then you're going to be disappointed. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you still want your values represented. You still think that the Republican incumbent or his challenger is, probably going to not be as good as one of the Democratic options.
Okay.
Right. So I don't think there's as much hostility.
There was a lot of in 2016. There was a lot of like amplified vitriol.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say there's a lot.
Primary thing with Bernie and Hillary and da da da.
Hillary,
she had like 80% of his platform. She more or less adopted. Like
because he pushed her further away.
Right. Yeah. But despite all that, there was enough. That and the Russians, of course. But like,
there's always the Russians.
Just spinning everything worse, right?
The Russians did it.
The Russians did it. Yeah.
Sure.
But
because Hillary was such a likable person.
And I think like in my race in particular, just to kind of
sorry.
that's okay. In my race
race.
in particular, I know the three of us have tried to focus on our ideas and what we have to offer, and instead of attacking each other.
I was going to say is I really haven't noticed, and I've been following your race for a while. I really haven't noticed anything that seemed negative, where the camps are butting heads or whatnot. I mean, you get the crazy commenters occasionally.
It's sometimes you have a crazy commenter.
Yeah, I mean that happens, and that happens.
I have a good story about that on Twitter. Somebody who is a supporter of one of my opponents. Now, not my opponent, but a supporter.
Yeah, sure.
Actually posted a picture of me with Diane Black. Now, I met Diane Black. I've met Scott Desjardins. I mean, I was with Diane Black when my son Xavier was awarded. He was actually elected the governor of Boise State. When he was in high school, the American Legion Boise State. My son was governor.
Nice,
right? And I was very proud of him. And so I'm standing proudly next to my son and Diane Black, who is, of course, giving him the award. Right? And so somebody posted, cut my son out of the image and just had me and Diane Black on there. And he said, who is Mariah Phillips really standing next to the person who she vilifies? And, that's my inflection, actually.
I like that.
Dramatic. Facebook.
That's how I read it. And I laughed. I laughed because, that's going to happen. That's going to continue to happen.
Of course.
Scott Desjardins is, going to find whatever he can to pick
so
apart.
Dishonest.
But yeah,
I can say it, right? I mean, I can. I can more than you.
I think it is. So I responded on that tweet, and I said, I will proudly stand next to any elected official who is giving my son an award for being elected governor of Boise State.
Yeah.
And then
did you have the original picture? Because you should have posted.
I should have posted the original. I
do
have it.
By the way, if we zoomed out a little bit, this is my son. Accomplishing great things as a child.
Yes.
I'm like, yes, okay, sorry.
My son actually commented afterwards, and so he said, I'm just mad I got cut out of the picture because I was looking good that day.
Nice.
And you could see a little bit of his afro in the picture. But that kind of stuff. It's not necessarily us as candidates, but some of our supporters. But I do think that the way that we've handled ourselves overall will help us. Me, because I'm going to win. Will help us. Garner the support from the people. And that's really what we need to do. And I think I've made it a point to not slam my opponents because of that reason. Because if and when I win, I'm going to need their supporters to they may not work on my team like some of my supporters are, but I hope they would. But if they truly believe in democratic values, then they should, work just as hard for me. As
get on board.
Get on board. Yeah.
I'm right there with you.
And so that's really where, what I have tried to do with this campaign. I'm a positive person. I want to give voters somebody to vote for and not just somebody to vote against. And
wouldn't that be refreshing?
Wouldn't that be nice?
Oh man, I miss those days.
And so, so I think that's really what my message has been. I'm a unifier. I'm somebody who stands up for the things that I believe in, stands up for the people that I care for. And right now, as I've been growing relationships across this district, I mean, I've learned so much about the people of this district, and I have so many relationships in all 16 counties. Hearing their stories, making the connections, developing those relationships, that's important, and I want to fight for them every single day.
Well, hell yes. I support that.
Yeah, thank you.
And kind of on this topic, so I would ask if we could give, I don't want to get too specific into it, but out of the three candidates, what do you think makes you the most qualified to be the Democratic nominee and to challenge the Republican incumbent?
Absolutely. Well, I think that I'm a U.S. government teacher. I teach my students how Washington is supposed to work, and it's not working the way that it's supposed to. And, my opponents are intelligent people, and, they have experiences that are helpful, but I have experiences with what everyday people are going through. As a teacher, not just as a U.S. government teacher, but as a teacher, I understand how federal legislation impacts right at the micro level. I understand how when we cut SNAP programs or we change the formulation in these programs, how it has a direct impact on the lives of my students and their families. I understand how lack of access to healthcare, for example, has an impact on the families that we serve. You look at things like mental health. And, right now we have a huge mental health problem, and it's leading to the opioid epidemic. It's leading to mass incarceration. It's leading to many other issues that if we could help solve some of these problems, suicide, if we could help some of these issues with better access to healthcare, we would actually see a generational turn. Because we see the children of people with mental health problems, the children of people with drug addiction, the children of people who suffer in poverty, and how that continues to roll through their lives. And so teachers have a unique perspective. Educators do overall, because we see how legislation impacts real life.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Oh, I'm aware. Your budget cuts are very, very clearly they're very clearly defined to you specifically.
Yes.
As an educator, how it affects you.
Right. And I'm not just talking about budget cuts to education.
Oh, of course not.
But but in a lot of ways, how it impacts our communities. And the depth of relationships that I've been developing, that comes naturally as a teacher and as a mom, right? So across the district, and to kind of go back to why I think, I see a future moving forward, I have people in all 16 counties that are currently working on our campaign, that are knocking doors. And these aren't people that have just said, oh, I want to get a Democrat elected. Mm-hmm. These are relationships that I've been building over the year, the 16 months that I've been running. Mm-hmm. And so, when I go to Ray County, in fact, tonight in Ray County, there were 4 groups going out knocking doors for me, wow. Right? While I'm sitting here with you. I also have groups in Rutherford County, 2 different groups in Rutherford County tonight. My husband's doing it here, but we've had groups in Murray County knocking doors. And so these depths of relationships encourage people to show up and, work for you. And then what happens if, I probably would not have run into you if I was just talking to the Democrats, right?
True.
Because I talked to David and he, invited me to this, I've had an opportunity to talk to you.
I'm pretty sure they pour salt around the outside of the door to keep us conservatives away from the Democratic Party.
But I hope that in something that I said...
You should come to a meeting, right?
I would love to.
Make it more entertaining, honestly.
But I hope in the depth of the relationship and the ability to have the conversation and have have a good dialogue, mm-hmm. you can then see that I'm not, a crazy liberal that's going to, take away your guns and destroy, your livelihood. That you can see my heart and that you may be willing to choose me over the current incumbent that we have in office.
I'll always keep an open mind.
And I think that, I've been able to build relationships like that across the district, and I think that's going to be helpful as we move forward through November. Now, one of our hashtags for the campaign is "Have You Met Mariah?" Mm-hmm. And kind of with the idea is, I am a Democrat. I've been a Democrat my whole life, mm-hmm. But I'm not someone who's unwilling to have a conversation and actually talk about what's best for our communities. right? And so my mom's a Democrat, my dad's a conservative Republican, and you know,
Sounds
so
familiar.
I've grown up listening to these conversations and kind of having these dialogues. I've always been one who keeps an open mind, asks important questions, because I truly want to understand, you know, where these ideas are coming from. And when you can understand each other, you can find consensus.
God, this country needs that.
We do. We really do.
We really
and that's,
do.
you know, and that's what, you know, as I've been kind of running through this campaign, I've been able to really secure several endorsements by important people in the state and in the country. So my first endorsement came from an organization called the People's House Project, which they actually are a labor-friendly, union-friendly political, it's a political action committee, a PAC, that they focus on candidates who want to bring the House back to the people. And so that was my first endorsement. They were attracted to my campaign because I'm a teacher, because I've worked 2 jobs most of my life, because I'm fighting for working families, and I'm putting that first in my campaign. And so they came on board, and they've been incredibly helpful with continuing to kind of help push our narrative nationally, which has been great. I also have received the endorsement of Bob Clement, who was an 8-time congressman here in the state of Tennessee. And he, I sat down with him, and we talked about, what I wanted to do and who I wanted to represent, which is everyone. And
that's so refreshing to hear.
and he came on and he said, when I was in Congress, it worked better because people were less about, standing in their corners and fighting for party. They were focused on solving problems and finding solutions. And he said, I think that you can bring that to Congress. And so he's supporting that. So I'm proud to have his endorsement. There's a former Obama faith advisor, Rachel Held Evans, who actually he had kind of 8 advisors that kind of spent time with him talking about faith, and she was one of those people that really got to spend time with him. She lives in the district. She lives in Dayton, which is in Wright County.
Oh, nice.
And I've had a chance to meet her, and she's been very vocal in her support of me, and so I love to have that. Indivisible, which is a group, a national group that is really standing for democratic principles and fighting for the people. They have endorsed me, and the AFL-CIO actually has come on, and so that's really a big one. You know them? Yeah. So the AFL-CIO, the building trades, insulators, they've come on and endorsed my campaign because they know that I'm fighting for the people. I'm fighting for the working people, and I think that's what's important.
Very good. Pursuant to that,
Yes.
so if and when you get elected, you go to Washington. You're talking about sort of bringing the voice back to the people.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned earlier in the podcast about how there are bills and what have you that are enjoying major bipartisan support. They pass well in the Senate with bipartisan approval, and they go nowhere. You're one person, right?
Absolutely.
And is this your hope essentially that you're part of this? I don't know if you want to call it the blue wave or maybe a reasonable wave, maybe, because to me they don't have to be blue. There should be reasonable people that want to work together, right? But like I don't know how to separate those two things either in the political climate that we're in.
Most of
is that well? We can talk about that later, James. Are you just seeing yourself as just one part of the solution? Are the things that you're planning to do just yourself in terms of your own initiatives?
So well, I do think that I'm one part of the solution. There is no one person that can change Washington on their own. I mean, that's just the reality. A lot of candidates will come with this is my 10-point plan and what I'm going to do on day one. Well, the reality is on day one, they're going to look at a freshman congressman and they're going to say, sit down.
That's not how we make the sausage.
That's not how the sausage is made. Exactly right. And so on day one, what I plan on doing is starting to build relationships. Because really the coalition building, and is how government works, right?
Exactly.
You need to be able to unify around an idea. And I'm not afraid to talk to Democrats or Republicans about an idea and an issue, because the purpose is to solve the problem, right?
Yes.
There's actually a caucus in Congress right now called the Problem Solvers Caucus. It only has about 40 members, but you have to come in by two by two, like Noah's Ark, like one Democrat and one Republican to join this caucus.
Interesting.
What's funny though is, shouldn't they all be problem solvers? Isn't that why they were elected?
Can you only belong to one caucus, or do you belong to multiple?
You can belong to multiple.
Is anybody of the the House Freedom Caucus in the Problem Solvers?
No.
Oh.
No.
I can't imagine why.
But
I tend to like what they do, but that's just me.
Well,
Well, apparently it's not solve problems.
yes,
Yeah,
it
well,
doesn't solve
well,
problems.
that's look.
We'll pick this up
Yeah.
afterwards.
But I think that so day one, what I'm going to do when I get to Congress, there's a lot of ideas, policy ideas that I have. There's a lot of ways that we can move forward, legislation that I'd love to see happen. However, none of that's going to happen if you don't build relationships and start to work with other people to solve problems.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I'm going to do day one. And actually, another thing that I think is very important is continue to hear the voice of the people, right? So there's a congresswoman who is in Illinois right now, Sherry Bustos. Sherry Bustos is a Democrat who is actually in a very red part of her state, but she continues to get elected because of the relationship building and the connection to the voters. And so what she does, she has what's called Supermarket Saturdays. She spends her Saturday when she's home. She doesn't live in DC. She spends her week there and then comes home on the weekends. And on Saturdays, she goes to the grocery store in different communities. And she talks to people while they're doing their grocery shopping. Because who goes to the grocery store?
Everybody.
Everybody.
I was going to say, I actually know a particular judge in a certain county in this district that I'm not going to name drop this judge,
Okay.
but this is a strategy this judge has.
Yeah.
Where this person literally is at Walmart and Kroger all day during the election cycle and just talking to people. And I think that I love that idea because that's really, she's accessible. Mm-hmm.
She's asking people what's important to them. She's able to tell people what she's been doing.
Not only that, but if she's there long enough, she could actually tell them where to find what they're looking for.
She does. She helps them pick out their
Aisle 7,
apples or whatever,
you know.
And so I just think it's a wonderful, I wouldn't say strategy, but I think it's not really even a strategy. I just think it's a way of governance that I think is important, and I really would like to emulate. We don't have enough of that. I know we don't have that in our district. But we definitely don't have enough of that, in Congress overall. So I think constituent services and connecting to the people you are, vowed to represent is the most important part of what you do. So then you can pass better legislation that actually serves the needs of Tennessee's 4th District.
Absolutely.
Because you know what those needs are from the people who are living it.
So I do have a question here.
Okay.
I mean, you know that in the 4th District, we're a pretty conservative district, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being a Democrat, being liberal,
mm-hmm.
How do you address the concerns of the majority of your district if you're elected?
Mm-hmm.
Say, for any kind of random conservative issue. I mean, you can come up with pretty much anything, but if the louder part of your district is saying, no, I don't want increased background checks on guns or something, are you going to vote against your people, or are you going to take their wishes into consideration? Like, say you poll our district and 70% say no to whatever you're being asked to vote on, but you feel that yes is the right answer. How do you deal with that situation? Yeah,
no, that's really a good question, and it's definitely something that's important, and I think will continue to be asked. As a representative, I do feel like I represent everyone.
Mm-hmm.
If what is being proposed does not go against the Constitution, does not go against,
it's not an illegal or questionable.
I would definitely take it into consideration, and I would want to have conversations with the people, the loudest voices, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I mean when the majority,
and
the louder collective.
Yeah, and really truly see if that's what makes sense for our district, and try to quantify those two things, right? So I think the Second Amendment is a great example of that, right? The conversation that we had.
Increased background checks or something.
Right. I mean, those are some things that I think are ways to kind of compromise on some of those issues. So I think that's what I would definitely feel like I
possibly
would do.
Hold town halls or something.
Oh, like that. Absolutely. I mean, again, connecting to the constituents is the most important thing that I think a congressman should be doing.
Definitely.
So I'm pretty active now. I mean, I try to. I try to hear as many voices as I can right now, and I would definitely continue to do that as a congressperson.
Very good. I guess we didn't really talk about this before the show, but I think pretty much every candidate we've had on here since we've had the conversation a little while back, there's something called the Pro-Truth Pledge. I don't know if you're familiar or not, but I bug every candidate that comes on here since we started doing it. We met a guy as a guest a while ago now, a guy named Gleb Sapersky. He runs this thing called the Pro-Truth Pledge. Okay. And basically it's, harken back, we're talking about with memes and, disingenuous narratives, always a crisis act, or all this stuff, and the fake news, and everything I disagree with is fake news, and the problems with that, and the problems with misinformation in media, in punditry. And we've taken the pledge, and it's basically just an affirmation to say, we care about what's true, we care about our facts, we're going to do our research. If you call us on it, we have to recognize it. We have to admit, I made a mistake here, I was wrong about this. And correct, and it's something we don't see very much at all in our elected officials. And so, I would invite you, maybe don't decide carte blanche. Do your research, but I would like to encourage you to sign on to that because I think it's a really important initiative.
I completely agree. And it's something we hold near and dear to our hearts. I mean,
and we've had several other candidates who've already signed, or agreed to sign, like Justin Clement. And he's already signed it, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah, we've issued retractions too, where we've gotten something wrong and said, upholding the pledge and saying, hey, since this point we had backlash on this issue, and we did further research into it, and we were completely wrong about these facts, and here's where you can find out more about it.
Well, as a teacher, I think my nature is to want to have the truth and to share the facts. And that's definitely my integrity is something that's very important to me, always has been. And I think that I don't know the Pro-Truth Pledge, and I would never agree to do anything that I haven't actually researched.
And of course, we're not on the spot.
But I definitely I will look into it and read through it, and I'll get back to you on it.
Absolutely.
But I think but the idea of it sounds exactly like who I am and what I would stand for. I teach people how to research, viable sources, and
and we need that so desperately.
There is just real quick on this note. The librarian at my school actually taught a lesson on this subject, and I know we're getting late, but the lesson was on Martin Luther King, right? And so it was about viable sources, and so she had them look up a website on Martin Luther King. Well, this particular website was actually developed by people who are not supporters of Martin Luther King.
Yes, I'm familiar with some of the rhetoric that goes in the dark.
So they were reading this research, and after they did it, she kind of took them through the lesson, and she said, "Do you believe that this is a reliable source?" And they said, "Well, it must be. I didn't know this. This must be true." And so she went back and kind of debunked everything that was in it and showed the how to tell the difference. And that was one of the best lessons that, especially in the light of fake news and all of that we're in now. It's important for us to do our research and know what is a reliable source.
Yeah, and that's part of the just to sort of follow up on that. Anybody here I am. We're podcasters. We can go on here and we can say anything.
Absolutely.
If we say it convincingly enough, people are going to believe us.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if it's true or not. For real, well, part of the problem, James. No, he's not. He's really not. I'm just giving him a hard time. But we can all be content creators, right?
Yeah.
Anybody can open up Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and you can just say things.
Info Wars, Alex Jones.
Yeah, all that stuff. You know.
I'm still waiting for the revolution. What's going to
Second
happen
Civil War.
Second Civil War.
Man,
We did
let's
too.
right through it.
I know, right?
I had plans.
I was at the lake. You know, I was at the lake. I missed the war.
I had plans.
So you know, and it's so vital to actually vet and understand what is actually fact and what is punditry, what is a fabrication, what's been misconstrued. Just like the picture with you and Diane Black, like that was made to look. That's going to go on Tennessee Star or something like that.
That's a very definition of disingenuous.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and it works when people propagate falsehoods,
Absolutely.
and it's destroying us.
Yes.
And that's what the Pro-Truth Pledge is really there to remedy. But please check it out for yourself.
I will.
Vet for yourself. Yeah. So I guess to wrap things up, want to know what are you up to? What do you got coming up in the near future with your campaign?
Well, I'll tell you what. Early voting starts on Friday. So
That's where I wanted to go. Yep.
Friday the 13th. A little ominous there, but early voting starts on Friday. And it goes on to the 28th. I always say, vote early. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Don't vote often. I want it to count. So vote once, but vote early. Do your homework. Know who you want to vote for before you go in there. Don't just Christmas tree at ABC. But if you do, pick B, Mariah Phillips. But but no, early voting starts on Friday, and the actual election day is August 2nd. Mm-hmm. And so between now and then, I have a couple of meet and greet events that are happening throughout the district, but most of what I'm doing is door knocking, just meeting voters where they are at home, or at the park. There's a couple of events that we have that we will be attending, but honestly, going door to door, talking to people, asking them what's important. That's what I want to be doing, spending the rest of my time doing. I do have a couple of debates with my other candidates. We have one tomorrow night in Bradley County and one on Friday in Rutherford County. But but I'm trying to get out and knock doors and talk to voters every single moment that I can.
So to recap, July 13th to the 28th is early voting.
Yes.
August 2nd is actually election day.
Yes.
Okay.
We're having a party August 2nd. Details are to be announced, but we're working out the details. August 2nd, we're hoping it's a victory party.
No, I understand. I've been in victory and defeat parties.
But it'll be a good time, and just doing the work. So.
Yeah, I understand. I completely agree. It's all foot traffic and knocking doors.
That's right. That's right.
That's that, and then on to the general, right?
That's right.
No,
we won't stop. I'm taking 3 days off.
Yeah.
The 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th, I'm taking off because my daughter goes back to college on the 6th. So I haven't actually seen her very often unless she is door knocking with me or attending events. So
that's a great idea.
Yeah, we're gonna have a little family time after the election and then ramp right back up. So
awesome. And where can we find you?
Yes, so you can find me on. I have a website, of course, Mariah 4 Congress. Mariah 4 Congress. I thought it was really clever when I first started. Tennessee District 4, and then I realized that I have to then explain that it's the number 4 every time. But Mariah 4 Congress on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, you can find me at Mariah 4 Congress. And our Facebook page, if you're on Facebook, is the most active way to keep up with what we're doing, just because that's where we post events, mostly easiest to keep up with. And it's in everybody's hand, so that's always convenient. But that's where you can find us, and like our page, follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. Share with your friends. We're all about it's time to turn up the turnout. We got to get people to the polls, and so that's what we're doing now, and that's what we will continue to do through November. I'm working hard for the hardworking people of Tennessee, so I want to represent you in Congress. I want to represent you in Congress. I can't represent you. You don't live in my district.
I might. I actually.
You need to double check because you might be.
I'm in Murray County, so I don't know.
Yeah,
or Canoe, right? Because you would either be that or 7th, right?
Yeah, 4th or 7th. Yeah.
Or you're 4th or 7th.
We need to find out.
Yeah, actually, we do.
Well, you have the options in either, right? Yeah. Very good. But thank you so much for coming out and taking your time. For us, You can find us fermentingopinions.com on the web. We're on Facebook, YouTube, under the same name. We have channels. Some people might be watching this right now because we're streaming. And for everyone else, you can find us on iTunes and Beyond Pod and all the good places you get your podcast listening going on. And as always, a special shout out to Ross James at James Media. Check him out, jamesmedia.com. He makes all this stuff work for us. So thank you very much to our digital wizard. And for us, I'm David Poiden.
I'm James McVeigh.
And we are Fermenting Opinions, and we'll see you next time.